Alicia lived in a small, dimly lit house on the edge of a cold, gray village. Her mother had died when she was very young, and her father had remarried a woman named Lady Seraphine, whose beauty was matched only by her cruelty. Alicia's days were filled with endless chores, harsh words, and cold stares. Lady Seraphine never missed an opportunity to remind her stepdaughter that she was unwanted, slow, and useless. From the moment Alicia could remember, she had dreamed of escaping this life. She would stand by the window at night, watching the distant hills and imagining a place where she could be free, where no one's sharp words or harsh hands could touch her. But every plan she made seemed to crumble under her stepmother's watchful eyes. No matter how quietly she tried to slip away, Lady Seraphine always found a way to punish her, reminding Alicia that freedom was a luxury she would never have. One cold autumn evening, Lady Seraphine returned from the nearby town with news that would change everything. Alicia's heart sank as her stepmother announced, "You will marry a man from the capital. He is wealthy, well-born, and will lift you from your humble life. Obedience is expected, Alicia, and this marriage is not optional." Alicia's stomach tightened. She had imagined freedom, adventure, perhaps even love, but marriage arranged by a woman who despised her felt like a trap. I do not know him," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Then that is your luck, child," Lady Seraphine replied with a cold smile. "Your life is not your own to decide. You will go and you will be grateful." There was no arguing. Alicia's heart ached, but she knew resistance would bring only punishment. She spent the following days in a daze, helping with preparations for the journey to the capital. She packed the few belongings she owned, a small bundle of clothes, a locket of her mother's hair, and a worn journal where she had written every dream she had ever dared to dream. The day of departure arrived with a gray, misty dawn. Alicia traveled with her stepmother and a small caravan of servants through winding roads and thick forests. Her mind raced with questions about the stranger she was to marry. Who was he? What did he want? Would he be cruel like her stepmother or kind? By nightfall, they arrived at a grand castle that rose out of the mist like a shadow. It was tall and dark, with towers that pierced the sky. Torches flickered along the walls, casting long, dancing shadows across the courtyard. Alicia's heart beat faster. She had never seen anything so grand, so powerful, and so intimidating. Waiting for her in the great hall was the stranger. He was taller than any man she had ever seen, with pale skin that seemed to glow in the torchlight and dark eyes that held a strange, unreadable depth. His hair was black as night, and his voice, when he spoke her name, was low and calm, sending shivers down her spine. "Alicia," he said, bowing slightly. "It is an honor to meet you." Alicia curtsied nervously. "Thank you, my lord," she whispered, unsure why his presence made her both anxious and strangely drawn to him. The man, Alaric, as she learned, did not smile or laugh, yet there was an air of power around him that was impossible to ignore. The servants whispered that he was a nobleman of the capital, a man of wealth and influence. But Alicia felt something else in his gaze, a kind of darkness she could not name. The wedding was a quiet ceremony. Alicia wore a simple white dress, her hands trembling as she exchanged vows with a man she barely knew. Lady Seraphine looked on with satisfaction, certain she had secured Alicia's fate and perhaps her own influence through the marriage. After the ceremony, Alicia was led to her new chamber, a room larger than her entire house at home. The walls were lined with dark tapestries depicting scenes of battles, forests, and creatures she could not identify. A heavy four-poster bed sat in the center, draped with deep crimson sheets. The air was thick and cold, and Alicia felt a chill run down her spine. Alaric entered the room quietly. He did not speak at first, only watching her with those deep, dark eyes. "Do not be afraid," he said finally, his voice soft, almost gentle. "I mean you no harm." Alicia nodded, her voice caught in her throat. She wanted to believe him, wanted to feel safe, but the strange pull she felt toward him was confusing. She had never met a man like him, strong, silent, and commanding. Yet behind his calm exterior, there was a tension she could feel in the room, a sense that something powerful and dangerous lay beneath his surface. That night, sleep eluded her. She lay in the vast bed, staring at the shadowed ceiling, listening to the quiet creaks and whispers of the castle. Every corner seemed alive with secrets. A sudden movement in the corner of her room made her gasp. A shadow too tall to be human slipping past the tapestry. When she turned fully, it vanished. Alicia shivered and drew the covers tighter around her. Her thoughts raced. What have I done? What have I agreed to? She thought of her old life, simple and harsh, and wondered if freedom would ever truly exist for her. Days passed, and Alicia slowly began to observe her husband. Alaric's presence was both frightening and magnetic. He spoke rarely, but when he did, it was with wisdom and precision that made Alicia feel small in the best and worst ways. He watched the castle as if he were its guardian, aware of every shadow, every flicker of movement. And though he treated her with civility, there was a distance she could not breach, a wall she could not climb. Yet, late one evening, she saw another side of him. A candle flickered in the library where she had wandered, and she found him sitting alone, gazing at a small, ornate mirror. His expression was one of deep sadness, a quiet longing that seemed almost human. For a moment, Alicia saw the man beneath the cold exterior, the one who carried pain she could not understand. She wanted to speak, to reach out, but the words froze on her lips. Instead, she left quietly, retreating to her chambers, the image of him etched in her mind. That night she dreamed of dark forests and a castle surrounded by mist. A voice whispered her name echoing through the shadows, and she awoke with her heart pounding. One evening, as Alicia walked in the castle gardens, Alaric approached her silently. "Do you know why you are here?" he asked. She shook her head, unsure how to answer. "You are not just my wife," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. "You are destined. The threads of fate brought you to me. You are part of something much larger than yourself." Alicia stared at him, confused and frightened. "I don't understand," she whispered. "You will," he replied, a shadow of a smile touching his lips. "In time, everything will be revealed. But know this, you are safe with me, and I will not let harm come to you. Yet the world around us is not safe, and there are those who would see us destroyed." Her heart raced. The castle, the shadows, the strange pull she felt toward him. It all began to make sense. She was not merely a bride. She was part of a story older and darker than she had ever imagined. That night, as she lay awake, the whispers returned. Softer this time, more insistent. She heard a faint knock at her door. Her heart leapt and she rose cautiously. A figure, draped in black, stood at the edge of the room. Its face was hidden in shadow, but its voice was clear. "You do not know what you have done," the figure said. "Your life has changed forever, and the path you walk is only beginning." Before Alicia could speak, the figure vanished into the darkness, leaving her trembling in the vast, cold room. She sank to the bed, her mind racing. The world she had dreamed of seemed farther away than ever. She had escaped her stepmother, yes, but she had stepped into a world of shadows, power, and danger, a world she barely understood and could not escape. Alicia pressed her hands to her chest, trying to calm the storm of fear and excitement within her. Her thoughts returned to Alaric, the mysterious stranger who was now her husband. There was something in him she could not resist, a pull that was both terrifying and comforting. She did not yet understand him, nor the destiny he spoke of. But one thing was clear. Her life would never be simple again. Outside, the castle loomed against the night sky, silent and watchful. And somewhere in the darkness, the whispers of an ancient fate stirred, calling Alicia forward into a world of mystery, danger, and love she had never imagined. She closed her eyes, wondering if she had made the right choice or if the choice had been made for her. Alicia had begun to understand that the castle, though grand and magnificent, was not a home. It was a place filled with secrets, secrets that clung to the walls like the shadows that never seemed to leave. She had hoped that life with Alaric would become easier, that she might grow accustomed to the strange new world she had entered. But every day she felt more lost and uncertain, caught between her longing for freedom and the growing sense that her fate had already been sealed. Alaric, though a man of few words, seemed to know her better than anyone. There were moments when he would look at her as though he could see into the very depths of her soul. In the silence of the library, where she spent much of her time reading ancient books, or in the long, quiet evenings by the fire, he would appear and sit with her, not saying a word. Yet his presence was enough to make her heart race. The more she learned about him, the more Alicia realized that Alaric was no ordinary man. He carried a weight she could not understand, a sadness that seemed to come from centuries of loneliness and isolation. There were nights when she would hear him walking the halls of the castle, his steps echoing through the vast corridors, as if he were searching for something, or someone. She wanted to ask him about his past, but every time she tried, he would deflect her questions with a vague answer or a change of subject. One evening, as they sat together in the great hall, Elysia could not ignore the tension that hung between them. She had become more attuned to his moods, and tonight, she could feel that something was different. Alaric was distant, his eyes clouded with a deep sadness that made her heart ache. She reached out, touching his hand softly. "Alaric," she said, her voice trembling. "What is it? Why do you look so lost?" Alaric turned his gaze to her, his dark eyes filled with a mixture of regret and something else, something she couldn't name. For a long moment he said nothing, as if he were deciding whether to speak at all. Then finally his voice broke the silence. "I never wanted this for you," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I never wanted you to be caught in the web of my past, but now I fear it is too late." Elysia's heart raced. "Caught in the web of your past? What are you talking about?" Alaric stood, walking toward the window where the moonlight bathed the room in a soft glow. He seemed to lose himself in the sight of the night sky, his face etched with pain. Elysia rose to follow him, her mind racing with questions. "You think I chose this life?" he continued, his voice rough. "You think I wanted to be bound to the darkness, cursed to live forever as a creature of the night? No, Elysia, this was not my choice. It was forced upon me by forces I could not control." Elysia stepped closer, her heart aching for him. "Alaric, I don't understand." "What do you mean?" He turned to face her, his eyes dark and intense. "I was not always this way. I was once a man, just a man like any other. But when I was young, I crossed paths with a being older than time itself, a vampire lord cursed by the gods. He offered me a gift, immortality, power beyond measure, and I accepted, thinking it would make me stronger, more powerful. But I was wrong. The curse took hold of me, and now I am bound to it forever." Elysia's breath caught in her throat. "A curse, and what does that have to do with me?" Alaric's gaze softened, though his eyes still held a trace of sorrow. "You are the key, Elysia. The only one who can break the curse. The prophecy foretold that a woman born of fire and blood would be the one to end it. And that woman is you." Elysia took a step back, her mind spinning. "But you don't understand yet," he interrupted, his voice urgent. "But you will. You are not just my wife. You are the woman destined to save me. And in doing so, you will change the course of history." The words hung in the air, heavy and unreal. Elysia felt as if the ground beneath her was shifting, threatening to swallow her whole. A curse, a prophecy? She had never believed in such things. She had only ever wanted a life of peace, free from her stepmother's cruelty. But now it seemed that her destiny had been woven into something much darker and far more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't even know who I am anymore." Alaric stepped toward her, his face softening with regret. "You are stronger than you realize, Elysia. The power you need is already within you, but you must trust me. You must trust that I will protect you no matter the cost." Elysia stared at him, her heart torn between fear and an inexplicable pull toward him. She wanted to believe him, wanted to understand this strange connection they shared, but doubts lingered in her mind. Could she really be the key to breaking a centuries-old curse? Was she strong enough to face whatever dark forces lay ahead? Before she could respond, the castle was rocked by a loud, earth-shattering crash. The walls trembled and the torches flickered, casting strange shadows across the room. Elysia gasped, her heart racing. Alaric's face darkened in an instant, and he rushed toward the door. "Stay here," he commanded, his voice sharp. "Do not move." Elysia stood frozen as Alaric disappeared into the darkness of the hallway. The sounds of battle echoed from the distant parts of the castle, shouts, clashing swords, and the unmistakable sound of something powerful and dangerous. Fear gripped her heart, as she realized that the world she had entered was far more perilous than she had ever imagined. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. Elysia paced nervously, her thoughts racing. What was happening? What kind of enemies did Alaric have? And more importantly, what did they want with her? Finally, Alaric returned, his face pale and his expression grave. He motioned for her to follow him. "We must leave," he said urgently. "The vampire lord, the one who cursed me, has come. He wants you, Elysia. He wants to use you to end me. Alicia's heart sank. What do you mean?
Why does he want me?
Alaric's jaw clenched. Because you are the only one who can break the curse, and he will stop at nothing to keep that from happening. Alicia's mind spun as she followed Alaric down the dark, winding corridors of the castle. The air was thick with danger, and the sound of distant footsteps made her blood run cold. They reached a hidden door at the far end of the hall, and Alaric opened it with a swift motion, revealing a narrow stairway leading deep underground. We must go now, he urged, his eyes fierce. There is no time to waste. As they descended into the darkness, the distant sounds of battle grew fainter, but the sense of danger only intensified. Alicia clung to Alaric's side, her heart pounding in her chest. She had thought she was escaping her past, but now she was plunging deeper into a world of shadows and ancient curses, bound by a destiny she didn't understand and could not escape. And as the final door closed behind them, sealing them in the darkness below the castle, Alicia knew that the true test of her strength had only just begun.